It's 2 p.m. on Tuesday, April 22nd here in Korea, live from Seoul. I'm Conn-young. It's been more than 6 days since a nearly 7,000-ton Seoul ferry sank into waters with more than 470 people on board. Now, 108 have been confirmed dead so far, and that figure continues to rise by the hour. It seems as more bodies are retrieved from the sunken vessel. Nearly 200 remain unaccounted for, and search and rescue operations, now in its 7th day down off Korea's southwestern coast, have been in high gear day and night, but not a single survivor has been found since the day of the accident. Search and rescue efforts, that's where we begin this afternoon at Paengmok-hang harbor, roughly 20 kilometers from the site of the ship capsize. We have a correspondent on site. Our Ji Myung-kil joins us live. Myung-kil, more bodies are being retrieved. Did we see that? But no news of survivors.
As you said, the confirmed death toll continues to rise. Because of that, a temporary funeral parlor will be set up here at the Paengmok-hang harbor. 2 Chinese and 1 Russian bodies were found today, but 1 Chinese body was not listed on the government's missing list, raising questions to the credibility of the government's figures. Divers are focusing on searching the 3rd and 4th floors today, where many high school students were when the ferry started capsizing. Family members of the missing who have been camping out here at the Paengmok-hang harbor have been gathering around the list of victims, trying to match the descriptions with their loved ones. Parents broke down into tears when their child's body was confirmed. Some family members shouted out at reporters, saying their privacy should be respected and not to reveal the identities of their sons and daughters. Still, more than 150 people remain missing, and nearly 90% of those are from a single high school, that is Conn-young High School in Ansan, a largely working-class suburb of Seoul.
A very tragic event indeed. Now, the international community is also lending a helping hand, aren't they?
Yes, that's right. The U.S. said it will send a U.S. Navy salvage ship to Korea in recovery of the ferry. The ship is designed to repair or salvage ships crippled in combat anywhere around the world. Since yesterday, 2 remotely operated underwater drones from the U.S. are assisting the search operations, and 3 experts from the Netherlands are helping as well. Korean authorities have also asked China to borrow barges and cranes. Today, 239 vessels, 32 aircraft, and over 750 divers are deployed for the search operation. This was Ji Myung-kil reporting from Paengmok-hang harbor.
And with no news of updates of any more survivors, the families of the scores missing continue to wait for news of their loved ones who were on board this ill-fated ferry. They have been camping out in an indoor auditorium near the accident site in Jindo, many of them deteriorating health conditions. Now, our Hwang Ji-hye is there with these families. She joins us live from Jindo Indoor Auditorium. Ji-hye, I can't even begin to imagine what these families must be going through, how they have been coping with these harrowing times the past 6-7 days.
Yes, Conn-young, it's been an agonizing week for those waiting for their missing loved ones to return. The atmosphere here is extremely heavy and depressing, as you can imagine. Many of the families are barely eating and sleeping, while some of them have even fainted. Some are so ill they've been put on medication. I had a chance to talk with one of the emergency personnel here at the Jindo Gymnasium, and who described the state of those who are here.
Right, and I think we will have the interview ready in our later newscast. But Ji-hye, it seems like there are fewer and fewer relatives or families that I see behind you. Why is that the case?
That is because when bodies are identified, the families are heading to the hospitals or the Paengmok harbor to witness with their own eyes. Representatives of the families are now in discussions on how to proceed with funerals. The families are still however, are still clinging onto the hope of finding more survivors as the weather conditions improve today. There are notes at the entrance of the gymnasium, and one of them reads, "Come back soon, daughter, so we can have dinner together." It's truly a heartbreaking scene. Yesterday, the representative of the families told the others that he had asked authorities to wrap up search and rescue operations by this Thursday. He said the authorities pledged to do their best to meet the deadline. This has been Hwang Jie reporting live from the Jindo Gymnasium.
Now, as the death toll continues to rise as the day progresses, local hospitals near the accident site down in Jindo and in the city of Ansan, the home to students who were on board the ferry, are working around the clock to receive the identified bodies. Our Kwon So-ah is out there at the hospital. So, what's the latest?
Conn-young, a few hours ago, the families of the students that survived the tragic accident have made an appeal to the public and at the Ansan Office of Education. Now, they urged for swift rescue operations and also criticized the media for its indiscriminate reports on this incident and asked for all of society to help them in this difficult time.
The children who haven't been rescued yet, the ones that went to heaven, as well as the ones that survived, all need our care. The kids that survived feel guilty. At the hospitals, they're helping the students to comfort their minds and bodies.
Now, so I understand funeral processions are currently taking place at that hospital.
Yes, Conn-young, a total number of 11 students that were victims were or are expected to be released today, and tomorrow the number will be at 21. Now, earlier at the Korea University Ansan Hospital's funeral hall, I saw a long row of family members at a funeral car crying in grief. And as the day is progressing, more mourners are visiting the hospital to pay their respects to the deceased that arrived earlier here at the hospital. Now, not only acquaintances, but many other citizens expressed their condolences too. Around 70 students who survived the ferry accident are being treated here at the hospital. Many of them are suffering from mental stress and depression. I tried to talk to one of the doctors or nurses, but they are currently all gathered at a meeting prior to a briefing that's scheduled for this afternoon. So we will have more on that briefing later on.
Right, and we'll be looking forward to that. So we hear that a group memorial altar will be set up in Ansan near the hospital you're at so that people can say their last goodbyes and pay respects.
That's right, and that memorial altar will be set up around 10 minutes from here, which will be at the Ansan Olympic Memorial Hall. So families and friends will be able to pay their last respect to them from Wednesday. And also in the city of Incheon, where the Seoul ferry left the shore, another group memorial altar at the International St. Mary's Hospital will be built too. Now, some parents have delayed releasing their children after requesting an autopsy to find out the direct cause of death. Now, this has been Kwon So-ah reporting live from the Korea University Ansan Hospital.
Now, let's try getting a better sense of what must be going through the minds of those who survived, those who went through this traumatic experience, as well as the mental and physical status of the families of the missing. Dr. Renzo Mattei joins us live via Skype from Naples, Italy. He is a medical doctor and vice president of the International Disaster Medicine Association. Dr. Renzo Mattei, thank you for joining us.
Thank you to you for your invitation.
Right. The focus in this country has largely been so far on the accident itself and search and rescue operations, but also critical are the psychological status of those who survived this tragic accident. Now, we have already seen suicides by those who survived this ordeal. Now, based on your medical expertise and experience, what are they going through and what should be done for them?
Well, I think you touched a very important and sensitive argument, because this is one of the most debated within the medical international community. So the psychological aspects of such huge disaster are very important. One of the topic is to try to prevent, not only in the survival, but also in all family personally involved in such a disaster, what we call the post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a very important psychiatric disease that could begin chronic, and in this phase, so within the 1-2 weeks from the disaster, is of utmost importance to try to prevent which kind of individual may develop in the future such very important syndrome that could lead to a very high disability in these persons.
Right, and I think the authorities here, medical authorities, are doing all they can to prevent that. Now, also of concern at this point, Dr. Mattei, is the quickly deteriorating health conditions of the families of the missing. Now, they have been camping out at an auditorium nearby the accident site for a week now, undergoing an unimaginable amount of stress. How should they be looked after?
So, the important thing is to have not only a pre-planned psychological team to be employed very rapidly on the spot, but also to educate, to prepare rescue team, firefighters, police, every kind of personnel involved in the operation, and also the families, so that the disease could be prevented, it could be treated as soon as possible, directly on the spot.
Right,
so
surely so.
The
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Now, Dr. Mattei, the general public here in Korea has been following news of this ferry tragedy, many in disbelief, sadness, anger, and despair. Now, I know that you, in Italy, the Italians went through a similar ordeal back in 2012 after the Costa Concordia accident. Now, what do we need to do as a nation to overcome this experience and really move forward?
Yes, you're right. Just more than 2 years ago, we had this disaster off the coast of Tuscany in the Giglio Island. Although the proportion is not comparable to the disaster in South Korea. We had 38 dead, but the impact not only on the environmental aspect, but also for legal, social, and organizational aspects are still continuing in Italy. And as I told you earlier, I think that government and all kind of national and international organization focused on the disaster medical management and management in the large sense are to implement as soon as possible pre-planned organizational procedure to be implemented on the spot, depending on the gravity and the impact of the situation ongoing.
Right,
so
all right, right. Definitely so. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Renzo Mattei from Naples, Italy. He is the Vice President of the International Disaster Medicine Association Federation. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
As the entire nation pray for a miracle to happen so that survivors could return from the sunken vessel, local authorities are putting the pieces together, trying to make sense of why and how this tragic accident happened. To find out what they have discovered thus far, we are joined live by our Kim Ji-yeon from our news center. She has been following the developments on the investigation front. Ji-yeon, what are we learning of late?
Well, the latest is that the Korea Coast Guard says it has determined when the crew members escaped the ferry. The rescue team from the Mokpo Coast Guard, which is about 30 kilometers away from the ferry site, arrived at the site at 9:30, about 30 minutes after it was first ordered from the Situation Room to send a rescue team. At that time, the ferry was listing 50 to 60 degrees. Some of the crew members started to escape the steering room 8 minutes later, after their last communication with the control tower in Chindo Island onto the boats provided by the Coast Guard. During the escape, the crew members did not release the 14 lifeboats they passed on their way that could have each carried up to 25 people.
Right, Ji-yeon, the more information we get, the more, I think, unbelievable it gets. We also hear that prosecutors and police are expanding their joint investigation into this ferry disaster. The latest from that front.
Well, Conn-young, we're hearing 2 additional crew members have been arrested, including the engineer surnamed Son, who tried to take his own life yesterday. Investigators are reviewing testimony from one of the escaped crew members who said that walkie-talkies were being used to talk over ways to get off the ferry. According to reports, an evacuation order came down to the engine room, and crew members are said to have traveled through a passageway accessible only to crew to gather on the 3rd floor before making their escape together. Meanwhile, the Gwangju District Court has granted arrest warrants for 4 crew members, including chief engineers and navigators, for neglecting their duties to lead the passengers to safety.
Right, investigators are also expanding their probe into the ferry company.
Yes, the joint investigation team is looking whether the too much cargo was loaded on the ferry that may have contributed to its listing with the abrupt turn of the vessel. Also, the team is planning to expand their investigation into whether it was illegal for the ferry to be restructured to include more cabins and hold more people, and whether the captain and the crew had received sufficient safety training. The country's financial watchdog and the National Tax Service have also started their investigation into the Cheongjin Marine Company and the family of the company's owners to see whether they were involved in illegal transactions or have evaded their tax obligations.
Right, Ji-yeon, more investigation should be done on that front, but how is the government responding to this probe?
Well, Prime Minister Chung Won says that the government will come up with a master plan to uphold safety regulations. And the first step, he says, would be to punish those responsible for the massive loss of so many lives here. He ordered related ministries to come up with a solution to improve the abnormal practiced by crew members and the ways to make sure manuals are kept in times of crisis. He said that the business entities themselves should check their safety regulations for the next 2 weeks, and then after that period ends, they might have an impromptu inspection after that period. We'll give you more updates on the ferry disaster later today.
All right, thank you, Ji-yeon, for that, and we will check back with ARIRANG's newsroom for more updates on that investigation front. Now, Korea isn't alone in this monumental task of combing the Sewol ferry for survivors and bodies. With U.S. President Barack Obama scheduled to visit Seoul later this week, Washington has made all of its resources in the region available to Korean authorities and says it will help with the investigation into what exactly caused the ferry to sink if Seoul asks for it. Connie Kim reports.
The U.S. remains at the ready to help Korea in this very difficult time. The Pentagon said Monday that the Navy salvage ship USS Safeguard is now sailing to the waters of Korea in case Seoul asks for help with salvage operations once they begin. The U.S. National Transportation Safety Board has also pledged to help investigators determine what caused the ferry to sink if requested. The U.S. Navy ship USS Bonhomme Richard, which was conducting routine patrols in Korean waters last week, is already on the disaster site along with its helicopters. President Barack Obama, who is scheduled to arrive in Seoul for a 2-day visit later this week, has pledged full support in the ongoing search and rescue operations. The presidential advisor Ben Rhodes said this week during a press briefing that the Seoul ferry disaster will take priority during Obama's trip to Seoul. In addition to the Seoul disaster, President Obama and President Park Geun-hye are also expected to discuss North Korea's nuclear program. Rhodes said the door to dialogue remains open for Pyongyang so long as the regime is ready and willing to denuclearize. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Now, with U.S. President Obama coming to town this Friday, North Korea is showing signs that it may be preparing for a fourth nuclear test. South Korean Defense Ministry spokesman Kim Min-seok said Tuesday that increased movement has been detected at the Punggye nuclear test site. Well, he adds that Pyongyang is at a stage where it could carry out a nuclear test any time. South Korean U.S. forces are also closely monitoring the situation, and the South Defense Ministry and the Joint Chiefs of Staff have also set up an integrated crisis management task force to prepare for a possible test. Experts have speculated recently that a fourth nuclear test could be in the works ahead of President Obama's visit to Tokyo and Seoul this week. Well, the weather has been playing a big factor in the search and rescue operations down in Korea's southwestern coast of Chindo and at the Paengmok-hang harbor. And let's get a check of the weather conditions today in the Chindo Island. Let's go to our Michelle Park for that. Michelle, how is the weather looking like there today?
Well, the favorable weather and the tidal conditions are helping with the search. And today we have a mild day with less wind compared to yesterday, with the highs of up to 19 degrees. Now, starting today, we're expecting a neap tides, which is when the sea current is at its lowest level. Now, those conditions will last until Thursday, and until then, the search operations are likely to continue for 24 hours a day. Now, also, along with the neap tides, there are two periods of the slow tides coming in for today. One just started a few minutes ago at 2:16 p.m. local time, and the tides will drop to below half a meter for an hour, giving the rescuers an easier time as they search the vessel. Now, current temperature of the water in Chindo is at 11.6 degrees Celsius, with the winds blowing at 5.3 meters per second, which is down from the morning. And the height of the wave is at 0.5 meters. And that's all I have at this moment. Back to you, Conn-young.
Thank you, Michelle, for that. That's all for me at this hour, but let me give you a quick recap of the situation on the Korea's ferry disaster and the search and rescue efforts. Now, as of this afternoon, 108 people have been confirmed dead so far out of the 470-plus passengers who were on board the Seoul ferry. Now, 174 have been rescued and 194 are still unaccounted for. Now, what makes this event more tragic, this accident more tragic, is the fact that more than 300 of these 470-plus passengers were high school students from a single high school on a field trip to Korea's resort island of Jeju. Now, most of them who were told to stay put in the cabins at the time of the accident by the captain and crew. They are unaccounted for, they're missing, and their families have been camping out at an auditorium near the accident site in Chindo for the last 7 days, looking for news that their children have returned safely and sound. But that, of course, is not the case at this point, and they're still waiting. However, a representative representing the families have said today and tomorrow until Thursday, search and rescue efforts should undergo until Thursday, and after that, salvage operations should start. Now, salvage operations, if that begins, that means that we have no hope that there are any lives, survivors inside the vessel, and sea cranes will be bringing in the vessel, sunken vessel, to shore. All right, we leave you on that note, and our extensive coverage on Korea's ferry disaster continues here on ARIRANG. Join me again at the top of next hour.